My name is Harris Himes, and I am privileged to be interviewing Senator Conrad Burns this morning, and so we'll get right to it. Good morning, Senator. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Senator, what I'd like to ask you right now, let's jump in first on this recent New Jersey Supreme Court decision that came in. What do you think the impact of that decision will be?
Well, you mean on the gay marriage?
On the gay marriage.
I'll tell you what, I was asked about that in 2 or 3 places in Montana, what I think about that, and I said, well, my tradition says that the structure of the family, the nuclear family, is one man and one woman in a marriage. And that's been the structure of the United States of America. That has brought us through 200 years, over 200 years of probably the strongest country and the freest country in the whole wide world is the sanctity of family. And I think if God would have wanted us to be 2 men or 2 women, he would have told us. And I don't think that, or he would have made us different. He did not do that. And so I think the impact on the society will be very negative.
And when we talk about negative, one of the things that interests me about this is that as an attorney, I see the justices instructing the legislature on what they're going to have to do. Would you care to comment on that, please?
Well, I'd rather for the legislature to take actions on what they see fit. This is a social problem that should not be decided by judges. When you've got maybe the Supreme Court, which is 9 old lawyers sitting up there and making the rules, or judges in a state Supreme Court who are mostly ill-equipped to make that decision. The representation in the legislature is the representation of the people and the majority of them and how they feel about these social issues.
Especially since the legislature is the elected body.
That's exactly right. Well, but judges in Montana are elected.
They are there.
That's right.
Yes.
But nonetheless, they can't be activist judges from the bench. They run with no affiliation to any party, but they should judge the law as it relates to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the respective states.
Now, I know that you supported the nomination of Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Alito as well, correct?
I did.
And it's your understanding that they are strict constructionists.
They are strict constructionists, and I tell you what motivates most of us was the Kelo decision as far as property rights are concerned, using the eminent domain part of our law in each state to condemn one piece of property owned by a private owner and then giving it to another private owner in the hopes that it will create more of a tax base. That is just wrong-headed. It's wrong about property rights, everything that we believe in as a country.
Absolutely. Now, earlier you were talking about your religious background. Would you please care to tell us what your religious background is?
Well, it's sort of been speckled. I was raised a Methodist in Missouri. My mother was a pretty steady churchgoer. My father, he would go every now and again. But I was raised a Methodist, and then when I got married, my wife was a Missouri Synod Lutheran, and so we ended up in the ALC Lutheran Church because that was kind of middle ways. I'm a Mason, and they don't recognize that in the Missouri Synod. So, but nonetheless, my wife was teaching in a day school. And so we become very, very active in our church, in the same church that we've been a member of ever since we've lived in Montana for the last 35, 40 years. And so then our church in Virginia is out in Springfield, Virginia. And so we attend every Sunday, and we participate in all the activities that we can possibly participate and have the time.
And I know that you've been endorsed by the National Right to Life Committee.
Yes.
And so I take it that you are very profoundly pro-life.
I am. I'm pro-life, and I've always been that way, and I proclaimed that and did the first day I ran for public office.
And then also you supported the act against cloning.
I did.
And it seems to me that there's a great deal of misunderstanding about stem cells and cloning and this kind of thing. For instance, embryonic stem cells, there are a lot of people that are trying to push that right now. We saw recently a commercial with Michael J. Fox pushing that. And would you care to comment, please, about the difference between the success that they've had with embryonic stem cells and then, for instance, umbilical blood adult cells? What is your understanding?
Well,
of
my
the
understanding on this, we've had much more success with adult stem cell.
Right.
Because they're predictable. Your embryonic stem cell is very unpredictable. They're just liable to do anything in their growth process. And also umbilical blood is showing great promise. Now, this does not mean that there's not some embryonic stem cell research going on somewhere. I just feel very strongly that they shouldn't use federal dollars.
And then, of course, when you talk about embryonic stem cells, you're talking about actually killing.
That's right, a human life.
And when you talk about adult stem cells, that's not the issue.
That's exactly, that's correct.
It's my understanding that there's a recent Harvard study, Harvard Medical School study and Rochester Medical Center study that indicate that embryonic stem cells at this point are a non-productive line of research because what it usually produces is simply tumors, whereas they have significant healing with the adult stem cells.
That is correct. That is correct. You know more about this than I do.
Well, I've been reading a little bit.
That's good.
Well, okay, and then let's talk also about the issue of the veterans. There seems to be a lot of very strong negative campaigning about veterans and your participation with veterans. Now, you and I are both former Marines, and so I would invite you to comment on what you have done over your tenure for veterans, please.
Well, let's start with our good friends that are still in the Marine Corps. Make sure that they're all equipped with the latest stuff. We were part of developing the new body armor that saved a lot of lives so far. And then when they come home, here in Montana, it was my idea that everybody didn't have to drive to Fort Harrison to get their medical needs fulfilled if you're a veteran. So we built 7 outpatient clinics, and we're going to build 2 more out in the state where you can go to Billings, or you can go to Kalispell, or you can go to Great Falls, and yes, we have one here in Missoula, so that the veteran, to make that more accessible to veterans. We did that for the simple reason some folks can't travel that far. You get some of our most elderly, and so we've been supporting, and right now the work that we've done through our outpatient clinics and also at Fort Harrison, we are in the top 5 of VA hospitals for service, facility, and accessibility to veterans in the nation. And I feel very proud of that. And then I get blasted for a whole bunch of other stuff that you know is perception, but it's not fact. When you look at the facts and our support and how we've funneled that support has been very, very good for the veteran that lives in Montana.
I've heard it quoted that over your tenure you have increased veterans' benefits and support for the VA by 51%. Is that accurate?
51% since the year 2000. You know.
Oh, just since 2000?
You bet.
All right.
We've because we had an increase of people coming into the system because of the 91 action, and of course now with Iraqi freedom, and it's gonna take more money, more facilities to take care of our veterans. We understood that now, and I passed a $1.8 billion appropriation on the Interior bill one time, just to catch us up, for the simple reason that the VA had miscalculated the money that they were going to need. So our support of the veterans has been, I think, pretty darn good.
When you say that they had miscalculated, were they under what they thought they would need? So you saw to it that it was actually bolstered.
That's right. That's exactly right. We put 1.8 billion back in there, and it was no fault of theirs. They had just used the wrong formula, and their math was wrong, and when they redone it, they were short.
I'll tell you what, personally, I enjoy being able to come up here to the Missoula Clinic. They're very professional, very good, and I have some feeling about doctors. My daughter's a second-year medical student, for instance, and so I'm one of those who can really appreciate that. I encourage all veterans to come in here and sign up.
Sure.
Now, also, though, this issue of body armor. Now, I understand that it initially, you've seen this vet vote commercial that comes out. I understand that initially that was aimed at Senator George Allen of Virginia, and he's running against James Webb. Now, James Webb, I'm a Vietnam veteran. James Webb is a Vietnam veteran, and that commercial really ticks me off. I mean, because it shows Vietnam, ostensibly Vietnam flak jacket that's being shot to pieces. And any of us, and especially James Webb, who endorses that thing, he's flopped from a Republican under Reagan as the Navy Secretary under Reagan, and now he's running as a Democrat, and allowing that commercial just absolutely offends me, because that's clearly not a Vietnam flak vest. And then, in fact, I think it shows one that was developed and put in the system about 1980, and then accuses Senator Allen and you of voting for allowing them to have Vietnam flak vests, which are not even in the system anymore. What would you care to say about that?
Well, but look, this has been a campaign this year in every state about mistruths. Other words, there's no facts in them. And the bad thing about it, most of them have been independent expenditures of which we have, as the candidate, have no control. No control at all. We can't tell you what to put in that ad. We don't even know it's coming. And yet it's been so blatant, it's unreal. But from the Democratic Senatorial Committee has produced a lot of these, and the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, but they have chosen to run a campaign of character assassination rather than talking about the issues. And I really feel bad about that, because it's unfair to the voting public of what's important and what isn't. They've had to change, they had to pull 3 ads, 2 or 3 ads here in Montana, because there was no truth in them whatsoever. There is no truth in this one. And they were never designed to tell the truth. That's bad. I mean, the intent was to lie, and by gosh, they're doing it.
Well, and when you say that perhaps you or somebody else doesn't have any control over the intent when it's going to be coming from the National Committee, on the other hand, State Senator Tester has, notwithstanding that, endorsed that by putting that out in some of the mailers, and also has suggested, well, he said that you voted against a bill that would have provided this new technology of body armor. When I understand that bill, and I understand that the debate that went on the Senate floor, the particular bill that's being referred to was right after we began the war, and the war in Iraq, and therefore the discussion that came from a Democrat senator on the floor never mentioned body armor, and none of the debate mentioned body armor. And notwithstanding that, he has said, and the ad said, that you voted against having this body armor for our soldiers and Marines, and that offends me.
Nothing could be further from the truth.
Absolutely.
And I just like to tell everybody that nothing could be further from the truth. And it is remarkable what they've done. But they've done it, and I have a lot of faith in the people of Montana. I really do. I think they can see through a lot of this stuff. You and I didn't serve in the Marine Corps. Are we going to let our buddies down now? No, we're not going to do that. We'll fight for that. They've got the best equipment that they can possibly have, and they're the best trained that we've ever had. And are we going to let them down? I don't think so.
In fact, on this issue of body armor, it's my understanding that it's not a matter of too little money that they might not have had it and still might not. it's because there's not enough production through the.
Some of that is true, but we've never sent anybody out in harm's way, out there where there's going to be real action, without them having the best equipment they could have, and we've never done that, and we're not going to start doing it now.
Now, one of the things that is an important part of the Iraq War is that we used what people are calling this shock and awe approach.
Yeah.
Actually, John Boyd developed the strategy that was used in attacking Iraq. But on the other hand, what seems to me to be the situation these days is that now we're into shock and awe politics.
That's right.
You know, it seems like October is the shock and awe to offend and manipulate Christian and conservative voters so that they will stay home. What do you think about that?
Well, I'll tell you what, don't stay home. And if you go vote, take somebody with you.
Absolutely.
And don't go and vote alone. Take somebody with you, and we'll be fine. But it has been the most depressing kind of campaign that I've ever participated in.
For instance, you were mentioning one of the ads or some of the ads that have been pulled. They have suggested that you wanted to tack on a 23% sales tax on top of the current income tax. Now, that ad had to be pulled, and I believe it was Mike Dennis in the Billings Gazette wrote an expose, and the ad was pulled. Where do you stand as far as tax reform?
Well, tax reform, we should look at tax reform. I have no problem with that at all. In other words, right now we got 55,000 pages of tax code right now with 2.8 million words. We need some reform, and we should be about reform. That's why the folks sent us there and said, if this isn't working, well, let's reform it. And right now it takes the ordinary person, 2 lawyers and an accountant, just to fill out their income taxes.
Now, be nice to the lawyers.
Well, I know.
Okay, go ahead.
With present company accepted. How's that?
Thank you.
But we should be looking at reform. But to suggest that I want to put a 23-cent sales tax on everything now, and in light of I'm up for re-election, I realize I'm not very smart, but I'm smarter than that. And I don't support that at all. But I do support some reform.
Now, correct me if I'm misquoting you. My understanding of what you would like to see as part of reform is to have, if we, for instance, had just a national sales tax, then if we did something like that, you would still want to have some substantial exemptions for families and that sort of thing. Is that an accurate statement?
Well, that's an accurate statement, but there's some that you wouldn't. I think charity should be, and I think home mortgages should happen. That has been probably the greatest key of every American to fulfill their dream, is to have a family and to own a home. I mean, that's the dream of everybody.
Yeah.
And the more we can do to facilitate that is really a good thing. So when you take a look at certain those things, and if you want to take a national sales tax to replace the income tax, I don't think that's going to be the answer that's going to end all of our problems. Maybe we look at a flat tax. Remember, we start talking about flat tax. There's a lot of options out there that should be considered that would simplify our taxes that we pay to the federal government, and we should look at them.
In fact, if you considered a flat tax, that would also include the same kinds of exemptions, would it not? Now, the tax reform package that's currently the law of the land that President Bush brought in several years ago and you supported, I remember the refund checks that came out. People have said that this is just something that has benefited the wealthy. Would you care to comment on that, please?
Well, how do you define wealthy when
Exactly.
when Mr. Tester defines middle class as $250,000 a year?
Right.
I mean, I don't know what reference we're going to make here, you know. Right now, under this tax is more called progressive than even under Clinton. Those people making over $180,000 a year right now pay 84% of the total revenues from income taxes coming into the federal treasury. And under Clinton, it was 82%. They're carrying their fair share, I would tell you. And of course that's right now in the top 2% of the taxpayers there is in the country. When you really look at it, if we don't make these extenders permanent, or this tax law that we passed in 2001, 2, and 3, if we don't make those things permanent by 2011, a family of 4, their taxes will go up around 58%. Even a single person going into the workforce will go up 48% by 2011. I don't think that's fair. I just don't think that's fair, because I really feel that the more people that control their money and have it in their own pocket, spend it more wisely than the government does.
And also, when you're talking about taxing corporations, if you start taxing corporations as part of that wealthy group, what does that do to the economy?
Corporations don't pay taxes, and companies don't pay taxes. They pass that along as their overhead in the cost of their product. They have never paid taxes, and to say that is just fooling the people, that the consumers of America. That's who picks up those taxes.
And I think history has shown us that when we have lower taxes, the economy booms.
That's right. Even John Kennedy figured that one out a long time ago, and President Reagan, and now this president.
And the benefit of Reagan's tax reforms were seen during the Clinton administration.
You bet.
And now we're seeing what amazes me, and again, sorrows me is the word I'll choose to use. The media will talk about some of the problems that the economy is having, and that'll be a big front page thing. But then the benefits and the lower unemployment and all of this kind of thing. The Dow is making record moves right now, and those are signs of a growing, improving economy.
Well, it used to be not very many people were invested in the stock market. 55%, and I think that figure's gone up a little bit. 55% of the households in America now watch the stock market. Why? Because they own mutual funds. They own pension funds, their pensions. It's good for their 401k. It's good for their KEO. Other words, our pension and our future financial success of taking care of ourselves in our old age, people manage that. And 55% of the households now has a vested interest, invested money in the stock market, one way or the other, to make it of interest. So just don't say it's a small group of people over here that's invest. We all invest.
Would you agree with me that the media has a powerful impact on the economy? If the media says the economy is good, then that helps to improve the economy. But if they are busy knocking the economy, and unfortunately to make the current administration and all Republicans look bad, then that also has a dampening effect on the economy.
It sure does. And I don't know how to combat that. The media has seem like they have their own agenda. They're just not there to report a story. They want to make a story.
I unfortunately tend to agree, and I would like to think that I'm fairly objective about these things, but those seem to be the facts that come across.
That's right.
Another issue that concerns both you and me as veterans and as patriots, and I'm an unabashed patriot, as I assume you are as well. Let's talk about the flag burning situation, the difference between your approach to the flag burning and desecration of the flag versus Mr. Tester's approach on that issue.
Well, he thinks it shouldn't be protected because if it is desecrated anyway, that's a form of freedom of speech. I do not. I think it's a national symbol and it should be protected.
And what have you done in Congress to help that?
Well, we've offered the amendment to the Constitution that you can't burn or desecrate the flag, but we have had little success in getting it on the floor for a vote because the Democrats have stopped us.
Okay, and jumping back a little bit, excuse me for taking this out of order, but a follow-on thought on taxes. What has Mr. Tester's record been on taxation?
Well, he's never seen a taxation bill that he didn't like. He's voted for a lot of them. And he said he cut taxes on 13,000 small businesses in Montana, but he raised them on 16,000. And I don't think that's fair. If it's a business tax, it's a business tax. And everybody should be taxed in a fair way. So he is a taxer and he's a spender. He increased Montana's budget over the 2-year period, over $1 billion. That's the largest increase in spending for this state in the history of the state.
My own research, and I put together a voter guide that people can see on montanavalues.org, lists the bills, the taxation bills that he has voted for. And on the other hand, I have discovered that you voted for the tax reform at the national level that we have discussed. What is the effect of the tax reform, the national tax reform, on the average Montanan, or any way you care to
Well, I've
address
already gone through that. If we don't make them permanent, their taxes are going to go up.
Yes. Okay.
And there's no question about that. So, and if we lose the Senate, they're going to raise taxes because they feel that and just as Mr. Clinton did when he put the biggest tax increase on us way back in 92 and 93, that's the way that you balance the budget, is raise taxes, not cut spending, and not be pretty frugal with the people who pay taxes, their money.
I think the last subject that I'm going to talk to you about, because I know that you're a busy man, is the immigration issue.
Immigration issue is and the illegal situation we find ourselves in on our southern borders. I will tell you, you do first things first. You secure the border first, and then deal with the temporary and guest worker programs. We can't drain this lake of illegal immigrants in this country until we shut off the flood. I mean, it's just anybody understands that. It's not that we don't want those people. And if we had any compassion at all, we would really seal that border, because people doing illegal things, not with drugs and crime coming across, but also of exploiting these people who wants to come to this country and to take their money and to put them in an old truck or anything to hide them to get across here, then dump them out in the desert to die is the most horrible thing we've ever seen in our life. If we have any compassion for those people at all, it's the only way we can deal with it if we secure the border, because there's a legal way. There are people that want to come up here and work, and we welcome them. We welcome them, but put them in a framework of which they can be legal. They can raise their families and do some good things for themselves, and then go back home. And that most of them want to do that.
And we should also be concerned about the Americans who live along the borders.
Oh yeah, because those farmers down there, they're getting their fields trampled in. You know, it's not a good situation.
And then here in Montana, for instance, most of the meth factories right now are down in Mexico because they can produce it much more cheaply than they can right here in the state.
Especially that crystal meth.
Yes.
They sure can.
And so we need to tighten up the borders for that reason as well.
You bet. You bet. We got to secure the borders first.
Now, in Congress, how have you voted on this issue?
Voted for it. Well, I voted for the fence, and the president signed it into law. And I don't like fences and walls. I just don't. I think they're a terrible symbol. But nonetheless, that's going to have to be one of the tools we use in order to secure it.
In order to protect our country, the citizens of Montana.
You bet.
Now, what is Mr. Tester's?
He supported the Senate bill as it was passed, and I voted against that. It had some amnesty in it. It had a lot of stuff in it, and I opposed that bill. I just don't believe you can do it that way. I think there is a structure in which we can accommodate guest and temp workers and still secure our border. And for the protection, I think we've got to do it. I mean, I see no other way of doing it. And now the president has kind of realized that maybe that's the right approach too.
Now, what would your desire be, and what would be your plan for your continued tenure in the Senate?
Well, of course, we've got a lot of projects here in Montana I want to complete. Dry Prairie and the North Central Water, Rural Water projects. We've got some more projects we'd like to do. I'd like to do some off-stream storage with more water, to hold more water in Montana. We're not having a lot of luck in the Missouri River of holding even Fort Peck. And I think, we want to take a look at this business of families and how our tax structure and how we support our families and to keep this economy going. We've got a very good economy right now, and we're producing more non-traditional jobs than any time in the history of our state, and I want to continue to do that.
Well, I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And I want to remind all the potential voters out there, do not be discouraged by this negative campaigning. Do not allow yourselves to be manipulated by this. Respond, come to the polls, let them know that you feel it's important that Congress remain in control of those people who are pro-life, those people who will not put up with the gay agenda and support traditional marriage, and will take care of the economy of this country appropriately. Please vote. Thank you very much.
And take somebody with you.
And take somebody with you.
That's right.